Social Democrats is, we all know about the Russian Revolution in 1917. We hear about the Bolsheviks rising up and seizing power, but we often don't hear about the German Revolution in 1918 because it didn't win. And what that was about was, the workers rose up and they did rise up. There were workers' councils. The government stepped down, but there wasn't a revolutionary party. There wasn't a party that could push that revolution forward. There were rather, some opportunist organizations that failed. But I really, you had talked about the street tactics, and that is one thing, everything I've heard, the Occupy movement is so exciting. And, one reason I think that that so many young people are not interested in Marxism-Leninism and seem to be drawn toward anarchism is because Marxism is so often associated with a lot of guys in a room talking. It's associated with this dry, kind of dull thing. And then, when Occupy was out in the street, so much of the Marxist movement just kind of turned up their nose. And they said, oh, that's not 99% and 1%. Wow, it's bourgeoisie and proletariat. They need to read a book. And that was the attitude. And they couldn't see that what the Occupy movement was doing was creating a confrontation. They were going out and they were in motion. They were doing all the shit that the Marxists talk about doing but don't actually do. They were doing what needed to be done, and they were doing it with ideas that maybe are not perfect. But the Marxist movement and what I define, I see Red Youth as a section of the Fighting Youth Movement of today. I was there. I was arrested in an Occupy demonstration. I've been arrested. I was arrested shouting down Pamela Geller. She put up the racist ads in the subway. They're anti-Islamic and all of that. And she came to the MTA board, and me and a group of occupiers, we went down there and we happily shouted her down. And we said, we all spoke at the MTA, and she got up to justify her racist ads, and I shouted her down, and the cops cuffed me and took me out of the room, right? And told me I was under arrest. It's about what you do. It's about the confrontation. And I think the reason a lot of young people are put off by Marxism is it looks like a religion. It looks like the holy work of Marx says in chapter verse 14. Yeah, and that's very, people don't get it. But Marx did the exact same thing that the Occupy movement did. Marx was a soldier. He was involved in the class struggle. He was building unions. He was in confrontation. And Marxism, the techniques of Marxism, and especially Leninism, because Leninism has a lot more to say about tactics, all these things is formulas and methods that have been worked out and have worked. That have worked and succeeded in reaching that goal of getting a society without bosses and bankers, where you have Soviets or workers' councils, things a lot like the General Assemblies they had at Occupy. Those kind of things being the ruling institutions and structures. That's kind of how I would view things. And so it's really too bad that so many sections of the Marxist movement have separated themselves from where the energy is. Mao Zedong wrote an essay called "Report on the Hunan Province," which is very often quoted. And in it, Mao talks about how in China it was the peasants were in motion, the peasantry. They were going around and they were kicking out the landlords, they were redistributing the land. And the Marxist movement said, well, they're not the workers. It's the workers' movement is where the energy is. These are the peasants. And Mao stood alone in the Chinese Communist Party and said that the peasants, that's where the action is. Sure, it may not fit what's in your textbook. But these people are actually doing it. The railroad workers, they may have a strike, but these peasants are out there fighting. And if we want to be where the action is, if we want to be in the center of this peasant movement, we have no choice but to align with the peasant movement, because that's where the energy is, right? And Mao was ultimately correct, because it was the peasantry that made the Chinese Revolution and won in 1949. The working class was part of it, and the peasantry aligned with the working class. But the real powder keg in the Chinese Revolution was the peasantry. Right? And it's that kind of, when Marxists get stuck, when we're stuck in our books and we're not stuck in reality, all Marxism is the science of understanding the world while you try to change the world, and changing the world while you try to understand it. Learning while leading, leading while learning, that's what Marxism is all about. And so that's kind of